Hello, Year 5 and 6. Welcome to Tuesday's reading tutorial. Ooh, put that in just the wrong place, really, haven't I? Let's put that there for now. So our WALT for today is to write chronology, fact and opinion, and inference questions. We're going to be looking at each of those in turn. So let's get started with chronology questions. I know I'm going to need to move this again, so we'll put me down there for now. Okay. So what I'd like you to do, I'm going to stop talking for a moment, and I'd like you to read through. You'll have to pause the video each time, but there are 3 different pages from the text. I'd like you to read through them, pausing each time until you've read them, and then we'll get back to it. So I'm going to stop now and let you have a read through. Okay, hopefully everybody has paused the video on each of those 3 pages, so they have now read them. So when we're doing chronology questions, all we need to do is take the key events from whatever text we're using and then jumble up their order. It's useful to always take an odd number of different statements from the extract. So either 3 or 5 is what I'd recommend. And then you put them in a different order. So from that bit of text, the 3 events that I've taken are: the master opens the door to the child's room with a rusty key from his pocket. Vindictus Sharp looks at all of the books on the boy's bookcase and is impressed. And then a green leather-bound book floats in the air, flapping its pages like bird wings. And they are in the correct order at the moment. They are in chronological order, starting with the master opening the door as the furthest back, then Sharp looking at the bookcase as the second, and a green leather-bound book floating in the air. That's the easiest way to do it to begin with. Just get them chronologically in the right order and then rearrange them, just as I have there. So a green leather-bound book floats in the air, flapping its page like bird wings. That's actually the 3rd thing that happens. Then it's the 2nd thing. Vindictus Sharp looks at all of the books on the boy's bookcase. And then the 1st thing is actually now at the bottom. You can do it with 5 different things rather than 3 to make it a bit more complicated. But what I'd like you to do is, once again, I'd like you to pause the video here and then go and have a go at that on your own, with your own texts or with the text that I've provided for you on the screen, but ideally with your own text. Then I'd like you to get your parents or your siblings, whoever it is, to have a go answering those for you, just to give them something to do as well and make sure you're doing it properly. As ever, and I didn't mention this in my first video, but please do then send us, or send to me, or send to your teachers who will forward it to me, the work that you've done, either pictures of that, or you can type it up, whatever you want to do, doesn't really matter. Photos of the work you're doing is absolutely fine. Okay, so if you pause the video there, have a go at that, and then if you come back once you've done that, we'll move on to the 2nd thing, which in this case is writing fact and opinion questions. So for fact and opinion questions, it can often be seen as quite a tricky thing. However, actually, within sort of the context of reading questions, it's really quite easy. You just need to remember that if it tells you something in the text, then that is a fact within that text. It doesn't matter what you think of it, doesn't matter whether you like it as a fact. If it is told to you explicitly in the text, then it is a fact. So an example from this piece of text, which, by the way, you're welcome to pause the screen again, pause the video to have a read of this next section. I have read this chapter though. This is the chapter 4, which I put up on Monday. So that is on YouTube, the whole chapter, if you wanted to listen to me reading that. An example from this one might be that the people in the orphanage call the boy a monster. This is a fact because it's stated explicitly, and you can see that. I've just underlined it for you on the screen. They call me a monster. So if it is stated explicitly in the text, then that is an example of a fact. It's also a good one though, because it's very easy to turn this into an opinion statement. So we can sometimes do that. We can take the things that we know are facts because they're stated in the text, and we can mold them and reword them slightly so they become opinion. So to turn that into an opinion question, you could have the statement, the boy in the orphanage is a monster. Not that he's called a monster, that he is a monster. As soon as you say that, that's not supported by the text. The text doesn't say anywhere the boy is a monster. That's just an opinion that we're giving. one of the nice ways we can use to look for this is the difference between the people in the orphanage call the boy a monster. That word call is a verb, something they're doing, as opposed to the boy is a monster, which is just an adjective. It's just describing him. Normally, if something is just describing a character, that's an opinion rather than a fact. If it's saying what the characters are doing with those verbs, that's normally a fact rather than an opinion. So, having said that, to start with, you're going to have a go at writing some statements of fact, and they're really easy. You just need to look for things in the text. So the top one there, and you can see I've just underlined it, at the foot of the bed sat a boy. So your statement would be, the boy sat at the foot of his bed. That's a fact, it's provided for us in the text. The next one, Sharp closed the door in the master's face. Again, I've underlined it for you. Fact given to us in the text. I'm not going to keep going over them. I'll just show you where they are in the text, because I'm sure you can read the different statements that I've put in. Just move myself over so you can see that sentence just there. So that's how we find the facts. And what I'd like to do is I'd like you to pause the video once again, go through your own text and write down 5 or 6 statements of fact taken straight from your text. Okay, hopefully you've now restarted the video, and having done your facts, we're going to have a look at statements of opinion. So when we're looking at opinion statements, we need to think about what we're being told by the author and what we aren't being told by the author. So in the case of this chapter, we're being told quite a lot by the author. We're being told about the events of Vindictus Sharp going down the stairs towards the basement, opening the door with the master, seeing this boy for the first time, letting the master wait outside, talking to him. All of these things are facts that happen. But when we are writing our opinions, as I mentioned before, one of the easiest things to do is think about what we think of the characters, what our opinion of the characters are, because after all, we are writing opinion questions. So one thing you might like to do is, for this section, it would be quite easy to assume that the boy is lonely. He's kept on his own in a basement after all, so he's probably not going to have that many friends. And we know that the other children think he's a monster or refer to him as a monster. So it's a fair assumption that he doesn't have many friends. So your statement of opinion could be that the boy is lonely. And there's some evidence for that in the text, but it's not told to us. And that's the key for your opinion. You want it to be something that there is evidence for, even if it isn't told to you explicitly. Again, the master is a coward. There's some evidence for that. He's clearly scared of the boy. He won't go into the room. He waits outside. He calls him a monster. He keeps him locked in a basement. All these things are evidence to back that up, but it is still only an opinion. We're not told anywhere. The author doesn't write, the master is a coward, anywhere in the text. So that is an opinion. And again, lonely and coward, both adjectives describing the boy and the master. So we get those adjectives in, it's making it far more likely that this is going to be a statement of opinion. And then the final one I've put there, the boy is very clever. Now, I'm not going to tell you what the evidence would be for that. I'd quite like you to send me an email telling me what you think the evidence would be if you agree that the boy is clever. It doesn't actually say it anywhere, but there is evidence in this text that suggests the boy is very clever. So do email me with your responses telling me what you think the evidence for that would be. Okay, they are our our opinion questions. We are now moving on to our inference questions. That's why inference is in my head. So we've got another section. So just take a moment to pause the video again and have a read through this section of the Nowhere Emporium. And when you've done that, come back and we'll start talking about inference questions. So hopefully you've now read that. Inference questions then, they're sometimes seen as the trickier, more challenging type of reading question, both answering them and writing them. But actually, in a lot of ways, they're one of the easiest because you don't need to go through the text finding sort of really specific information, because they're based entirely on what you think. They're your opinion, which is why we've led from the opinions into looking at inference. So when you're thinking about that, you've got to be a bit of a reading detective. You've got to find the clues that the author has left for you. If we're talking about writing, this is when we are showing, not telling. So what is the author showing us about these characters, even if he's not telling us anything specific or anything explicit, I suppose I should say. So you might decide to go down the line of, again, opinions about characters. So you need to think about what you know for certain and what you think you know. So one thing we know for certain is that Vindictus Sharp calls himself a monster. But at the moment, we don't know if he is going to be a protagonist, good character, or an antagonist, that's an evil character. So a good inference question might be something along the lines of, Vindictus Sharp is not actually a monster. He's trying to help the boy from the orphanage. Do you agree or disagree? And what you're doing there is you're taking your opinion, your statement of opinion, and then you're saying, do people agree? Do they disagree? If we go back very briefly, the boy is lonely. Do you agree or disagree? That's an inference question. The master is a coward. Do you agree or disagree? Give evidence to support your answer. That's an inference question. So going from those opinions that we've just talked through, that's how you can then turn those into an inference question. So the key is to just write a statement that could be argued for or against. Could be argued that it is true, could be argued that it isn't true. So as you have with the other activities during this reading tutorial, what I'd like you to do is to now have a go at writing some inference questions from either your own text or from the Nowhere Emporium extract that I've put up on the board. If you haven't seen it already, do go and watch the YouTube video, save you having to read it all on a screen. We're trying to limit as much looking at screens as we can. That's the end of today's tutorial. Do keep an eye out for the next chapter, which will come out tomorrow. There isn't going to be a reading tutorial tomorrow. Tomorrow is another day where I would like you to be reading aloud and using those prosody, intonation, and varying your speed and volume skills as you read out loud to your parents. And then on Thursday, you'll get your next reading tutorial. So I shall speak to you then. Remember, please do keep sending your work to your teachers so that we can use it on Friday's feedback show. Can't wait to see all of the things that you send to me. But for now, goodbye.